Hello there, my lovely jewelry makers. I'm Christina of CSLdesigns, and in today's tutorial I'm going to show you how to make this 2-color wire macrame bracelet where we end up with this really cool effect of the colors laying side by side all the way along the bracelet. Now if you're new to macrame, I do sell a macrame starter kit in my shop along with other jewelry kits and tutorials. You can find that below the video. But if you want to learn how you can make this 2-color wire macrame bracelet for yourself, then keep watching. So these are the materials that we're going to need. First of all, the wire that I'm using is a regular round copper wire, and I'm using it in 2 colors, both copper and silver. And the first gauge here is a 1mm. This will be our base wire. And then I'm using a 0.5mm in the macrame, also in the same 2 different colors. Now you can also use a 0.6mm, that will give you a slightly chunkier look. But regardless of the wire you choose to use, I highly recommend using a soft wire with wire macrame. Now we also need some findings to finish off the bracelet with, so I've got a locked claw clasp, an extended chain and a few jump rings to put it all together. For the tools we of course need some flush cutters to cut our wire, some tweezing nose pliers to help manipulate the wire, and then some 6-step bell making pliers for any loops we need to make. You can of course use round nose pliers instead of this. Now I'm going to be working on this mini macrame board. It's really handy because it has these notches all the way around where we can easily take the wires in and out as we need to. Now don't forget, you can check the description box below the video for material list and useful links. Otherwise, let's get it all ready and let's get started. We then need to cut some lengths of our wire, so I have 2 lengths here of our 1mm of about 35 centimeters each, and I just have 1 of each color. And then I've got 2 lengths of the 0.5mm of about 1 meter each, again 1 of each color. So the first thing I'm going to do is take my 2 lengths of the 1mm and I'm going to attach these onto my macrame board. So I just want to lay them across the long way here. And I want to then just place them through 1 of the notches each. So just make sure you have a bit of an end left and then push that towards the back. And the same with the other one. And then they're sitting right next to each other here. And I've just pushed the ends down on the back. And then just on the bottom, I'm just going to bring them into the notch that's directly opposite. And again, push the end around the back. So the wires are nicely fastened here onto the board. We then need to attach the 2 lengths I'm going to use to make the macrame with, and I'm going to just put them through the same notches there, and I'm going to stick the colors to the same one as well. So I'm putting this copper length through the notch where the other copper length is. So I'm just keeping the colors together and just kind of wrap it around so we make sure it doesn't pull out as we start the macrame. And the same with the silver one, just put it through the matching length of wire and then just kind of wrap it around so we fasten it a bit in place. And then we don't need to attach them to the bottom because obviously we're going to be working with this. So this is going to then be our starting point, and we just want to straight away get into doing the macrame. And I'm just going to start with one side at a time. It doesn't matter what side you start with. I'm just starting on the left here, which in my case is the silver one. So what I'm going to do is get right to the end, and then I want to bring it underneath the equivalent holding wire. So also in my case that's the silver one, but just the one on the side that we're taking that wire from in the first place. And then make sure to come up between those 2 holding wires, and then you just want to pull it through a bit until we have a little loop like this. And then we want to take the end and come back through that loop. So we're going back over the holding wire but then back underneath itself, and then just pull that through. So we create this loop with the wire and making it a bit smaller here, more manageable. And then from there I'm just going to leave that and then grab the other length from the other side, in my case the copper one, and then get right to the end. And then I want to bring this down through this loop that we created that's coming from the other side. So down through that, but make sure I also go in between the 2 holding wires and then come out underneath the holding wire on the right side in this case. And again, this is the copper one for me, so the same color as the wire that I'm working with. And then also make sure to come up through the loop of itself that is creating on this side. So basically back through that loop and out over itself. And as I just pull this a bit tighter, you can see we have that loop and it's coming through that loop of itself there. And now what we want to do is start tightening this. So obviously right now these loops are loose, but we don't want to just pull it like we do if it's cord we're using, because the wire is going to react a bit differently and it won't quite end up how we want it to. So what I'm going to do is kind of work with one at a time. Now obviously this is the first knot that we're making, but I'm just going to kind of pull the wire close to where the holding wire is, and then I put my finger against it while I'm then pulling the long length tighter. So the loop basically tightens around the holding wire, and then the other loop is trapped in there with it, but we obviously need to tighten that as well. So I'm just going to hold against the loop there on the side while I then pull the length tighter and therefore make the loop smaller and pull that nice and tight. And then once they're pretty tight there, I'm going to grab onto both lengths of wire and just pull them out to the side. So we just kind of pull the whole thing and set all the wires in place. And that is now the first half of our first knot. So we need to make the other half, and I'm going to do the same thing, except we're going to start from the opposite side. So I'm going to start with my right one, and in my case that's a copper one. I'm going to go underneath the right holding wire, and then again make sure to come up between the two and pull that through a bit so we make the loop here on the outside smaller, and then take the end and come back through that loop of itself, and then we can just gently pull it and make it a bit smaller and more manageable. Then I'm going to grab the other length from the other side, that's the silver one in my case, get right to the end, and I'm coming down through the loop, but I'm making sure I go down through it in between the two holding wires, and then straight away out towards the side where that wire is coming from. And just make sure as well, I'm going to then grab that length and pull it up over the wire of itself, which means as I'm pulling this tighter, we can tell that it's then coming through the loop of itself on this side. And again, we've ended up with these two kind of loose loops, one on each side there, and they are connecting, which is what we want. And then we just need to tighten this up just like I showed you before. So I'm just going to do one at a time, start to pull it a bit tighter first of all, and then you can grab the length from where the loop is and kind of pull right where the wire is coming from the previous knot a bit tighter. And then once you've got that in place, hold your finger against it, and then you can pull the long end tighter so the actual loop tightens around the holding wire. And then we have the other length, so basically do the same thing, put your finger against the wire where it's coming out from the other knot, and then just pull the length tighter until we basically can't pull it any tighter than it is. And then you just want to grab onto both lengths and pull them out towards the sides so everything gets as tight as possible. So this is our first full knot, and I'm then going to start making another one. And again, I'm going to start with the left side here. So I'm just grabbing the end of the wire, going underneath that left holding wire and coming up between the two holding wires, then come straight back out over that holding wire towards the side that it's coming from, and then just bring it underneath itself so we make sure it goes through the loop that we created, and gently pull it all the way through so we get a smaller loop here that we can then make sure to lay over the top of the holding wires. Grab the other length from the other side, go down through that loop and make sure you go in between the two holding wires and come straight back out underneath that right holding wire, because we're now working on the right side. And then we can just straight away also make sure we go over the wire of itself there, so that means we've gone through the loop that this wire creates on this side. And you can see that better as I'm pulling it tighter. And then we have the two loose loops for now, and just with one at a time we can pull one loop tighter from where the wire is coming from, and then just pull the long length to tighten it around the holding wire, and then just repeat the same on the other side. Hold it against the wire itself as we're tightening the loop, and then just pull it on both sides to make it extra tight. And you can always help push your knots a little bit closer together as well as you go if you feel like there's maybe a little bit too much gap between them, and you can always use pliers for that as well. Now that's the first half of this next knot. I'm then going to start from the other side. So as you can see, I'm always alternating, starting with one side and then moving back and forth all the way along as we make a new knot. I'm going to go underneath that right holding wire because I'm using the right working wire, and then back over the top of it and then straight away underneath itself, so we create a loop that we've gone through, and then just lay that over the holding wires. Take the left length and go down through that loop and in between the holding wires and straight out to the side where it's coming from, and just go over itself as well, and gently pull that tighter. So we have our two loops that we need to tighten, so just do one at a time, pull that up nice and tight, and then brace against the other one and repeat with that. And don't forget to just give it an extra pull on the sides, and then we've now done another complete knot. So you basically just want to keep going like this. Don't forget, if you need to, you can always push your knots a bit closer together, and you just want to continue until you have the length that you need. So now I've got the full length that I need here. We can remove the piece from our board. So just remove the wires from the slots, so like this, and then just put the board away. Then we need to finish off the ends here and obviously get rid of the excess wire, and also create a loop with these wires so we have something to attach a clasp to, or you can use the wires to make the clasp with completely. That's completely up to you. But first I'm just going to get rid of these working wires. So you'll find that one is coming out more towards this one side here, and the other one is coming out more towards the other side. So this one, in my case is silver, is coming up towards the side that's facing us right now. What I'm then going to do is take the very end of it, and you want to then go down through this first knot where it's coming from, but make sure you go on the other side of the holding wire. So within the same knot, but just on the other side of the holding wire, again just this holding wire, so basically in between the two, and then it comes out on the other side here, and you can just pull it all the way through, and basically that means this wire is now wrapping around the holding wire that's running through the middle. And what you can do is bring it through the knot again, so from the side it's now coming out from towards the opposite side, again making sure I'm going through the other side of the holding wire, so now it's on the outside of it but still within the knot, and then just pull it all the way through. Make sure to tighten that nicely. And then I'm just going to leave it at that. I like to just do the same with the other one before I cut them off. So just go to the other side, in my case that's the copper one, and then take the end, again go down through that same knot where it's coming out from, but in between the two holding wires there. So we just catch around this also copper one in my case. Just pull it tight all the way through. Just flip it around and come down through the knot again on the other side of that holding wire. So we make sure this wire wraps around, and just make sure to tighten that nicely. Now what I'm going to do to finish off the ends is just kind of place them over the top as if they're going to wrap around again, but just bring them over so we can go in and cut off the excess. Basically just in between those two holding wires. So cut the wire off. I'm just going to do the same with the other one. Cut it down. And then we just have those short little ends that are kind of sticking out. You can feel them with your fingers. Then we just want to make sure to squeeze them in. So the very ends of this wire, they're going to get basically tucked inside of the knot, and you won't be able to feel them with your finger. So obviously we're not going to have it catching or scratching on any skin or clothes. Just do the same with the other one. Make sure to just push that very end in. And then we've gotten rid of those lengths of wires. Then what we have left are the two holding wires there. So we're basically just going to use one of them to make a wrap loop with, like I said, in this case. So I'm just going to first of all grab my pliers, and I just want to have my silver one be the one I make the wrap loop with, just so that's going to match the findings that I'm going to use, but obviously you can choose whatever you want to. And first of all, I just want to kind of bring it a little bit in towards the other one, and then back up so it comes straight up from the end, but just a bit more in the middle like that. Then I'm just going to grab, in my case, the copper one, bring that over the other one, and basically just wrap this around a couple of times. Make sure the wraps are nice and tight. So we're just fastening it in place. Then once you have a few wraps, it looks a bit something like that. I'm going to go in and cut off the excess of that holding wire. We can get rid of that. Make sure to just squeeze down the end so that's also not sticking out and can catch or scratch on anything. And then we're left with the last length here that we can use to either make a clasp with if you want to, so it's incorporated into the bracelet, or like I'm going to do, we just want to make a wrap loop. So I'm going to place my pliers just a little bit above where that previous wrap is, and then just put about a 90-degree bend into the wire so it's going out to the side. Then I'm going to grab my 6-step bell making pliers. You can use your round nose pliers if that's what you've got. Just place them on that bend, bring the wire all the way back around to basically create a full circle, and then I'm just going to grab onto that circle with my pliers so we hold it in place, and then wrap the end of this wire around underneath the circle and filling in that little gap that we left until we basically run into the other wraps and run out of space. Bring it around, and then we can cut off the excess. trim that down, get rid of it. And again, just make sure that we're pushing down that very end so it's nice and comfortable. And then we have a wrapped loop on this end that's ready to have a clasp attached to it. Of course, you want to then just get to the other end and do exactly the same thing. So once we've finished off both ends and attached our clasp, then we just need to shape it. So you can either shape it around something that has the size and shape you want it to have, like a bracelet mandrel, or you can just use your hands and fingers. So go in and start putting a curve into it. So I'm going to be going from side to side here, gradually adding more and more of a curve until we get the two ends closer together. So we can of course use the clasp, and you just want to get it into the shape that you want. I personally prefer a more oval shape. I find that sits better on the wrist. But once you have it ready, we can then use the clasp and the bracelet is finished and ready to wear. So that is how you make this 2-color wire macrame bracelet. Now don't forget, I do sell the macrame starter kits in my shop. Just have a look below the video. And also I have loads more tutorials with both macrame and wire macrame on my channel and several different playlists, so feel free to check that out. Otherwise, I really hope you enjoyed this one. Thank you so much for watching it, and I'll see you in the next one.